I'm standing in one of the most spectacular areas in West Asia, Al-Biqa' Valley. It was once known ages ago as the main wheat producer for the Roman Empire. This way it's Damascus, this way it's Jerusalem, and this is Lebanon. Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates and stories from this region that I call home. Today, our top story is about a surprise announcement, one that led to deadly violence on the streets of Iraq. I'm talking about Muqtada Al-Sadr's resignation. On Monday, the Iraqi cleric announced that he was resigning politics. Soon, hell broke loose in the streets of Iraq. His supporters entered Baghdad's green zone. Clashes erupted with the security forces. 30 people were killed, hundreds were injured. And then all eyes were on Muqtada Al-Sadr. What would he do next? Soon, the cleric asked his supporters to lay down arms. And shortly afterwards, peace returned to the streets of Baghdad. But it wasn't without sending a powerful message. Now, what will happen next in Iraq? We tell you more about this in this report.
This was the scene at Baghdad's Green Zone on Monday. Thousands of Sadr supporters storming in. Protesters diving into the Iraqi presidential pool. Gunfire echoing in the high security zone, and security forces fired tear gas to disperse supporters. It all started with a resignation. Iraqi cleric Muqtada Al-Sadr said he was quitting politics. Why? Because of Baghdad's political deadlock. Sadr's political bloc was the largest in Iraq's parliament. They had 73 seats, but no majority. So in June, his lawmakers resigned. They couldn't cobble up a coalition, so they hit the streets. But on Monday, Sadr dropped a surprise. He announced his complete withdrawal from politics. The effect was immediate. Thousands of his supporters flooded the streets of Baghdad. They blocked roads, they entered the green zone, and they clashed with security forces.
Our demands are to dissolve parliament and to hold the corrupt to account. And we say, my master Abu Hashem, their pride is under your feet, and we will sacrifice for you. Victory is ours.
Our revolution is solely an Iraqi one. It is not Sadrist nor Tishrin. This is an Iraqi revolution. Iraq should be returned to its people.
At least 30 people were killed, hundreds injured. As violence escalated on Baghdad's streets, Sadr had another message. He gave his supporters 60 minutes to lay down arms and leave Baghdad's green zone.
I still believe that my supporters are disciplined and obedient. And if in the next 60 minutes they do not withdraw, including from the sit-in in parliament, then even I will leave the movement.
The effect was almost immediate. Sadr supporters started withdrawing immediately after the message, a demonstration of his cult-like following. After hours, normalcy returned to the streets. But the message had been sent. Monday's events have confirmed who is the real sheriff in town. It is Muqtada Al-Sadr. This gives him a lot of leverage in the future. He could re-enter politics, he could take on an advisory/religious role, or he could pull the strings from behind. So it is important to understand what his ideology is. What does Sadr stand for? He hails from a very powerful clerical family. Both his father and father-in-law are Ayatollahs. Sadr has gradually grown into a key political player in this landscape. He is backed by a Shiite support base who would go to any lengths for him. So Sadr is looking to become the most powerful Shiite political player in Iraq. He gained popularity after the US invasion in 2003. He led movements against both US and Iraq government forces. His objective: to create an Islamic democracy in Iraq. Sadr despises Iranian influence in Iraqi politics. He wants to keep the Iran-backed faction out of power. In Iraq, government formation has always been complex, but the nation has been without a government for 9 months now. There is Sadr on one side and the Iran-backed coordination framework on the other. They are locked in a zero-sum game for dominance. Monday's event show that things could get violent very soon. The situation in war-scarred Iraq remains volatile. Unfortunately, all factors of civil war are present. There's tensions between parties. There is a power struggle and the abundant availability of weapons. If the political deadlock persists, things could get bloody again. What will happen next? Only time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION. World is One.
Turkey, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and much more. We have a lot more lined up for you in this edition of the West Asia Post. But first, as usual, let's take a quick look at what else is making the headlines across the region.
4 people were killed in overnight clashes between rival Shiite groups in the southern Iraqi city of Basra. Security forces were deployed to quell the fighting. Syria says the Aleppo airport was hit by Israeli missile strikes. State media says the missile attack caused some material damage at the airport, but there were no casualties. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid re-emphasized a joint commitment against allowing Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. This comes as Washington and Tehran push to revive a 2015 nuclear deal. A leaked video reportedly showing Saudi security services brutally assaulting a group of women at an orphanage in Saudi Arabia. It has prompted outrage online and a promise by the government to investigate the incident. The FIFA World Cup trophy was unveiled in a ceremony in Tehran. The trophy will tour all 32 countries that have qualified for the World Cup before returning to Qatar. Iran is ending its years-long ban on car imports after more than 4 years. Tehran is set to import new cars soon, but under very strict conditions that limit who can import them.
For the past 3 days, there have been strikes and counter-strikes in Syria between the US military forces and the Iran-backed groups. Now, this has shown light on the presence of US military forces in Syria. 900 members of the US military forces are still present in the country. But why? Why are they still there? And what did this recent exchange indicate about their presence? We tell you.
In August, one US base in Syria's Al-Tanf came under attack. It was hit by drones. Other US bases in the region were also targeted by rockets. There were no casualties, but Washington called the assaults harassing in nature. So the United States hit back. They targeted Iran-backed groups, killing 4 people.
The strike was necessary to protect and defend U.S. personnel in Syria, which have been the targets of several recent attacks by Iran-backed militia groups, including the most recent ones on August 15th. Our response was proportionate and precise. It was designed to minimize the risk of casualties, and it responded to the nature of the attacks by Iran-backed militia groups.
This has now raised questions about why US forces are still in Syria. Washington's first military involvement in Syria was against ISIS. This was in the year 2014. That year, a US-led coalition launched air raids against ISIS. In 2015, they supported the formation of the Syrian Democratic Forces. Their main goal is to train Syrian Kurdish fighters. Since then, US forces are stationed in the war-torn nation. There are still around 900 soldiers there. They are a part of the Operation Inherent Resolve, an international coalition to fight the ISIS. Most of the US forces are located in SDF-controlled regions. This includes Hasakeh and Raqqa provinces in northeast Syria. Since 2016, they also control the Al Tanaf base. This is located in an area where the borders of Syria, Jordan, and Iraq meet. But this is fuzzy foreign policy at best. Stationing just 900 soldiers serves no purpose for Washington. In fact, it does the very opposite. Millions of dollars to maintain these bases. So what does the United States really want? Washington has no standalone or consistent Syrian policy. It has changed from one administration to another. Last year, the government ordered a review of its policy. They outlined 4 priorities justifying the US troop presence. 1. Training and arming the Kurdish fighters. 2. Supporting local ceasefires. 3. Stabilizing the area. And 4. Helping with humanitarian aid and access. However, the US does play an important role in the region, especially in helping stabilizing tensions in the area. US presence prevents Turkish troops from fighting the Kurds. It also prevents Russian and Iranian advances. But even then, there is too much uncertainty. It is because America hasn't identified any strategic interest here. All they want is to avoid the big fight. The new policy even hints at more disinterest. It indicates at a possible withdrawal in the future, a withdrawal that both Syria and Russia have been rallying for. Any US withdrawal could change alliances very quickly. Firstly, Turkey could launch more attacks against the SDF. Secondly, an uncertain SDF would be left helpless without American allies, so they could end up turning to Russia for help. And thirdly, Iran may become more emboldened in the region. So the question isn't about whether US will stay or leave, it's about when they will leave. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
The Turkish mainstream media was once a lively clash of ideas, but now it has become a tool of the government. There are government-approved headlines, front pages, and even topics of TV debates. In our next special report, we tell you how Erdogan has tamed the media in Turkey.
In the late 2020, Erdogan's son-in-law quit as the finance minister. But that wasn't the big news. This is because staff in Turkey's leading newsrooms got a clear message. Do not report on this until the government says so. The resignation of Berat al-Bayrak was covered by social media. But for over 24 hours, Turkish media was virtually silent. Not talking about the drift in Erdogan's inner circle. A picture of how the Turkish president had tamed the media. It is an industry that Erdogan has bent to his own will. Directions to newsrooms often come from officials. They tell them what to do in phone calls or WhatsApp messages. The party gives instructions to determine the agenda, and the editors-in-chief are the main contacts. But that's not the only way. The biggest media brands have been taken over They are controlled by companies and people close to Erdogan and his party. This series of acquisitions started in the year 2008. State advertising revenue only went to pro-government publications. Some news agencies were fined for criticizing the president. They called it a breach of Turkey's media code. At the center of it is the Directorate of Communications. When a major news breaks, the body is ready. If it could spell trouble for Erdogan or his government, it jumps into action. Reports mention they routinely contact editors and senior correspondents to set out a coverage plan, especially events relating to the economy or the military. Newspapers and broadcasters that still criticize the government often face the music. Suspensions are imposed on them, they are disqualified from state advertising payments. So the message is pretty loud and clear: toe the government's line or face the consequences. Turkey goes to polls next year. For Erdogan, it is a crucial moment. The Turkish president is trailing in the polls, so he will need all the media help available. Some believe the crackdown will get even worse in the coming few days. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Symbolically and spiritually, the Jordan River is of huge significance. But physically, it is a dull flow of water. This is Christianity's third holiest spot. By the time it reaches the baptismal site, its dwindling waters become sluggish, dull brownish green shade. It is an indicator of Jordan's crippling water crisis, one that could lead to further conflict. Let's take a look.
This is Christianity's third holiest spot, the Jordan River. Christians believe Jesus was baptized here. Many visitors immerse themselves in sacred waters. For them, it's a show of faith. Some even bottle up some of the water as holy keepsake. But the biblical Jordan River must have looked dramatically different. Currently, it's a bad-smelling, weak-flow water. Its decline is due to multiple factors. That includes decades of diversion and the fight over precious water in the Jordan Valley.
I think the most important challenge is, from technical point of view, is the availability of the water resources here in the region. And as you know, the water resources availability is already affected diversely with the impact of the climate change. When the water is available in the region, I think the solution of the Jordan River will be more and more easier.
But championing for the international revival of Jordan River isn't without challenges. It could end up reopening disputes. A stretch of river was once a hostile frontier between Israel and Jordan. But crises can often bring adversaries together, like Amman and Tel Aviv. Israel has pledged to help rehabilitate the lower Jordan River.
We have a huge security geopolitical interest in maintaining our border with Jordan, which is the biggest Israeli border, with peaceful neighbors. And this is a small price to pay if you compare it to a war that might break over water. And in such a region like ours, which is so thirsty for water, we cannot allow ourselves any war because of these issues.
Jordan, like the rest of West Asia, is dealing with a crisis. It is the second most water-scarce country in the world. Water levels in the Jordan River are decreasing. Meanwhile, population here has doubled in the past 20 years, especially with waves of refugees coming into the nation. At the turn of the century, the share of water per person was around 3,400 cubic meters in Jordan. This has now plummeted to 80 cubic meters. Things could get way worse very soon. By 2030, 90% of Jordan's low-income population could endure severe water insecurity. As a country, Jordan is already water-stressed. There was never too much water to begin with. The West Asian nation gets around 110 millimeters of rainfall a year. Around 90% of its land is arid. This makes it particularly vulnerable to climate change. For years, Jordan has been a bulwark of stability in West Asia, an oasis of peace between warring neighbors. But the country's water crisis could threaten this stability. Water scarcity could exacerbate existing systemic issues. Areas could become uninhabitable. Tensions over water sharing could rise, and political violence could erupt over water. If Jordan doesn't act fast, the future of water here could be grim and bloody. West Asia Bureau WION, World is One.
Persian rugs. They were once an investment for many. But today, these traditional rugs are being replaced by modern-day carpets. So, Iran's rug makers are reinventing. They are keeping with time, choosing new designs and abstract prints. And also, these carpets are way cheaper than the traditional rugs. Let's take a look.
In Iran, a revolution is underway. But not just any other revolution, a revolution in the world of Iranian rugs. The Islamic Republic is known for their carpets. They have dense and carving floral designs, rich in colors. Their beauty and quality have long been recognized worldwide. Yet sales have collapsed over the past 30 years. In 1994, Iranian carpets sold abroad were worth $1.7 billion. It represented 40% of Iran's non-petroleum exports. By 2020, the figure shrunk to $70 million. Of course, there has been an impact of international sanctions. But there are other factors to blame.
The patterns of Iranian carpets are ancient, but today there is a strong demand for contemporary styles. They are more suitable for a modern house.
So Iranian rugs are gearing up for a makeover. They are becoming more contemporary. Their colors are clear and the size is smaller, exactly what modern tastes demand. The new style is also cheaper. Some sell for $3,000 or $4,000. Meanwhile, a traditional carpet can sell for $160,000.
Nowadays, people perceive the carpet as a consumer good to put in front of the door, whereas in the past, it was an investment, and the carpet represented a capital for the future. It's lost its status as an object of art.
But not everyone is convinced. Many believe modern carpets can never replace the traditional carpets. The new geometric styles may be appealing, but they call it a temporary fad, a fashion statement, one that will disappear like every other fashion trend. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
And now to Saudi Arabia. As Saudi Arabia swelters in sizzling desert temperatures, some people are escaping to the city of fog. It is a mountainous oasis of cool where warm clothing is needed even in the days of summer. Take a look at these visuals. That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay safe. I'm Ghadi Francis, coming to you from West Bekaa, Lebanon. And you're watching WION. World is One.